This is myth and folklore.
Are called Esprit de Vin, and then in about 4 or 5 years ago, David Taub's son, Mark Taub, who took over the reins of the company, acquired another importer, which had a large focus on French wines, and he married that together with his Esprit de Vin operation to create Taub Family Selections, which is within his company, which again is called Palm Bay. This represents the top echelon of the wineries that he imports, that we import as a company. And the base of the strengths of the portfolio is Italy, which we'll talk about tonight, but we also have some lovely wines from France. So maybe look for that in a future tasting. So we'll jump right in to the first estate. I'm just gonna let these little words spread across the screen here. So this is sort of how we organize all of our estates with these 5 pillars: passion, integrity, family, curiosity, and terroir. And it's a great way to kind of bring everything together. So Ferrari, if you have that one, this is the sparkling wine to kick us all off. So we're tasting tonight the Brut non-vintage from Ferrari. So Ferrari is a winery was started in 1902 by Giulio Ferrari. He spent several years in France and in the Champagne region studying the vineyards of the area, the wines, and the unique way that they produce wines and champagne. So I know you guys are experts. You taste a lot of fine wines because you're part of this organization. So you probably know a little bit about why champagne is unique, or why the method that the Champenois came up with is unique. And the reason for that is that the second fermentation, which adds the effervescence to the wine, is done in a natural way, which is basically a second fermentation. So you start any way you would in a normal winemaking situation. You have grapes, you crush the grapes, you ferment the juice, and then you have wine. So at that point, the wine is still, not sparkling. And in the champagne method, you'd put that still wine into a bottle with a little bit more yeast, little touch of sugar perhaps, seal it up, and another fermentation is going to take place. So wine science 101, you have, of course, sugar in the grape juice, the yeast eat the sugar, and the sugar is converted to alcohol, and that's how we get wine, of course. A few other things are produced in the process, one of which is carbon dioxide. And in a usual situation, in a winery setting, that carbon dioxide just floats up and goes up into the air. In this sense, with the bottle fermented or champagne method sparkling wine, we've sealed that process or that fermentation into the bottle, and we're trapping that carbon dioxide. And so it becomes, during this second fermentation in bottle, becomes part of the wine. So Giulio Ferrari, fascinated by this process, fascinated by the quality of champagne, and wanted to bring this tradition back to his native area in Trentino, which is in the northern part of Italy. So he was the first to plant Chardonnay vines in Italy. Chardonnay is one of the grapes, of course, that's the cornerstone of not only champagne, but many famous sparkling wines of the world. And he was the first in 19, he was also the first to create a sparkling rosé in Italy. So those are two kind of hallmarks of the Ferrari family. Additionally, they're committed to sustainability. So they do have 300 acres of vineyards, which are all organically farmed, which is excellent. So we don't want to spend too much time on just raw details, and so I wanted to throw some pretty pictures in. I know that 2020 was a challenging year for everyone. Looks like we're still kind of dealing with those challenges. So we can all kind of travel together tonight through Italy, and we'll throw some beautiful scenery in there. So here is some workers at the Ferrari estate here farming some of the grapes, or picking some of the grapes, and beautiful mountains in the distance there. And then we'll dive into the wine that you guys are drinking tonight. So this is the Ferrari Brut This was the first wine that Giulio Ferrari made. So it was first produced in 1902. It's 100% Chardonnay. Again, it's done in this this classic bottle fermented style, and you're going to get a lot of the hallmarks that you expect from finer sparkling wines that you might, of course, sample from Champagne or other parts of France, or even some of the prestigious producers in Northern California here in the US. You get lovely fine bubble to the wine, and that bottle fermentation process, you get a beautiful kind of toasty, almost like kind of a fresh baked bread component to these wines as well. Jerry, any thoughts here about Ferrari? Anything you wanted to jump in and say?
Yeah. So I muted. We have dogs, and I think they're about to go crazy here in a minute. So forgive me if that's the background. Well, I'll only say in this part of Italy. So you're in the northeast, in an area known as Trento Doc, DOC, was created essentially by Giulio Ferrari as a sparkling production zone. And in the 100+ years, it rivals certainly Franciacorta, which is just a few miles due west of the area. Both of them are bordered to the north by mountain ranges. And in Trento Doc, it is more mountainous than it is, say, in Franciacorta. Franciacorta is very hilly, but it's more lake driven, and in Trento Doc, it's more mountain driven. So the variety does see higher elevation. It sees diurnal temperature shifts, which are really ideal for the grapes, Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier, and Pinot Bianco, I believe also. I think, kind of picking up on something Josh said, 2020 was a challenging year for us all, but in Italy, it's looking like it's going to be like a 2016 vintage. It's going to be an amazing vintage, almost from north to south. So it's one of those weird little twist of fate where we couldn't go there, but they were busy making beautiful wine. So that certainly, even though this is not a vintage wine, this wine did, though it did. I think in December it was given an award by a very dubious sounding organization, Champagne and Sparkling Wine World Championship Accord. It was named Best Italian Sparkling in Italy, this brut. So they had a lot to choose from. There's a lot of sparkling wine. Almost every region of the 20 regions that make sparkling wines now, but Trento Doc and Franciacorta are certainly the two that rival Champagne. And this wine's always been one of my favorites. I've always loved this wine. Blanc de Blanc, all Chardonnay, very pretty.
I have a question for one of you guys. I'm just wondering, so this seems to be like their flagship wine. What else does Ferrari produce?
They have also, in this non-vintage tier, they have a Brut, so Brut Rosé, which looks very similar to this package. It just has a dark pink label instead of white. Then they do have a tier which is called Pearl. Pearl, kind of referring to the bubbles in the wine. And those, at that tier, there's a Brut and a Rosé, and those are vintage dated. So we didn't talk a ton about that, but with sparkling wine, especially champagne method or bottle fermented sparkling, you tend to have non-vintage cuvées because you want to have basically a wine that is the signature character of your estate, right? So every time you open a bottle of Ferrari non-vintage Brut, or every time you open a bottle of Veuve Clicquot yellow label, it should taste the same, so that non-vintage style. So it's rare to see vintage wines, and they're typically only made usually in the best years. And then they do have Tête de Cuvée, or like the top line of their range, which is actually called Giulio Ferrari. And that is, there is a Brut and a Rosé, and those are also vintage dated and come in kind of a more unique bottle shape. So, but great question. I think Ferrari represents a really great value for this style of wine. And in Italy, it's actually not only widely enjoyed, but it's Ferrari kind of operates in kind of like a sort of a fashion and style kind of tie-in. So it's a very very fancy wine to drink if you are living there in Italy as well as in Texas. So let's roll on. I know we've got a lot to cover tonight. So moving on to the second wine. So we're taking a little tour now. We're going to go over to Sardinia with Sella and Mosca. And you're going to be tasting Vermentino here in a moment. So this winery was founded in 1899. It was actually two gentlemen, Mr. Sella and Mr. Mosca, that founded it originally. It's now owned by the Moretti family. And they have done a lot to not only take care of indigenous varieties like what we'll try tonight, which is Vermentino. And then one of the other wines that is very important to their estate is called Cannonau Reserva. Cannonau is the same grape as Grenache. It just has a synonym in Sardinia where they call it by another name. And that Jerry might could comment on this as we go, but it's a very Italian thing, even in different regions of Italy, from Tuscany to Montepulciano, for instance. They would have different names for the same grape variety. So which is sort of a regional thing that you often see. Let's look a little bit closer and see some beautiful coastline here. So I thought this was, a lot of times in these presentations, you're going to get pictures of vineyards, and we'll still get plenty of that. But I thought this was a really lovely image of the Sardinian coast, with this beautiful deep blue water here. And then we'll jump into the wine. So this is something we do at our companies, what we call like bottle basics. So we want to dive into what does the label really mean, and what are the things on the label that are telling you a little bit about the wine. So Vermentino is the grape variety. It's not one that you're going to see readily in grown in California. It is one that you see, of course, in Italy, here in Sardinia. It's grown in Tuscany, and then you also see it elsewhere in the Mediterranean coast. So there is some plantings of it, for instance, in Provence, France, where it's known by another name, Rolle. So it's a common grape of the kind of Mediterranean area. And I think it's a very interesting wine that you can see if you're tasting it at home. It has great acidity, but also has kind of a medium-bodied, nice texture to it. So I think it's a good, kind of a good bridge wine between someone who likes a lighter style, like a Pinot Grigio, to someone who wants something a little bit more full and exotic, like a Chardonnay. So it's something that kind of, I would say, kind of lives in the middle there. This wine in particular, you have this kind of diving into the logo, which I thought was very interesting. And I'll go back one so you can see the logo here. Also at the top, got the little laser pointer here. And I thought this was very interesting. So the image is actually a stylized reproduction of Egyptians that are actually in the act of squeezing grapes to make wine. So it's something that kind of goes back to the complex heritage of Sardinia as an island, but also the kind of complex heritage of the Mediterranean and how wine is really infused into the culture of that region. I'm going to turn it over to Jerry, maybe for a few words here on Sella and Mosca.
Yeah, Sardinia is so unique into itself, and is the most probably unique of the 20 provinces of Italy. As such, they're Italian, but they're equally Sardinian, whatever that means, and that's something similar applies in Sicily. And maybe it's just kind of an island mentality where they know they belong to the nation of Italy, but they really do kind of exist handsomely and quite comfortably on their own. And they'll identify themselves as Sardinians first, and then Italians second. The island itself has been it's very dramatic. I mean, it doesn't really have, it's kind of like cliffs come right out of the water. So it doesn't really have a whole lot of, beachfront. It does have some, but for the most part, it's very dramatic. Lands growing straight up out of the water. Some of the one of the pictures Josh showed earlier kind of gives you a little bit of insight to it. And the vineyard siting for the Vermentino, this Vermentino is in Alguijiro, which is in the northwest part. There's a little weird crescent moon lip to the north part of Sicily, northwest part. And so this faces Spain. It faces away from Italy. But to Josh's point about its Vermentino's growing history, Sardinia, Tuscany, it also does very well in far northeastern Italy and in Friuli and in Slovenia. So it's kind of like Trebbiano. It doesn't really have a specific location, and as such, it'll always be referenced by its site of designation. So Vermentino di Sardegna is specific, and it will be classified to be known as Sardinian Vermentino, which will differ from Tuscan. Just opportunities to try the two, you'll see the differences are definitely there. But very beautiful area if you get a chance to go. The people they're very pleasant. They're not overly gracious. They're just they will tolerate you quite nicely. But the food is amazing. The hospitality is nice, but it's a really different vibe than the rest of Italy. Highly recommended.
Speaking of food, what foods would you pair with this wine? Is there anything that stands out to you?
Shellfish, crawfish, oysters. Firm cheeses too, hard cheeses, fruits. It's fairly adaptable as white wines would be, but oddly enough, being an island, seafood isn't the most predominant food on Sardinia. There are cows, there are sheep, there's a lot of cheese made there. So these wines do quite nicely with very firm cheeses, hard cheeses, very savory, salty, briny, pickled foods even, for that matter.
Yeah, I would agree with Jerry. A lot of white wines are quite versatile, and I think that this one, as he said, it would be a great wine to have, with seafood, oysters, but also lovely as like a first course with salads, things like this. So yeah, I think a lot of different applications. All right, any questions from anybody so far? Otherwise, we'll keep rolling here. So next, we're going to jump down to Campania. So Campania is on the western coast of Italy, sort of near the bottom of the peninsula. It's sort of the area, it's a bay, kind of near the area of Naples, this producer, Mastro Berardino, is probably the benchmark or the most famous producer and most famous family of this region. And one of their, I think, very unique things that they're doing is they're focusing on these indigenous varieties that are native to the region. Italy in general is fascinating in the sheer amount of indigenous grapes that you find nowhere else in the world. And so as you kind of explore the different regions of Italy, you might discover grapes you've never heard of. And I think you'll certainly find that as a common theme tonight. So this area and this winery is near the Mount Vesuvius, so the volcano that famously erupted and covered the ancient Roman city of Pompeii in a layer of ash, preserving it. Probably some people on this call have actually visited Pompeii. It's quite fascinating. And Master Berardino was actually chosen by the Italian government to assist in some research in recreating some of these wines that would have existed during the times of Pompeii. And I think that's really quite interesting. And it had to do a lot to do with their dedication to the historic practices of the region and also the native grape varieties of the area. Couple pictures actually with this winery because there was a lot of fascinating things to look at. This is just a picture of their cellar, and I thought it was very lovely. They actually have this fresco or fresco-like painting here above the wines. So that's quite lovely. You can see it also here in the background. And then we got to have some pictures of vineyards, of course. So here we have some people farming on the Master Berardino estate. And then this will be our third white wine of the evening. So the grape variety here is called Coda di Volpe, and Coda di Volpe literally translates to the fox's tail and has to do with the way the grape bunches appear on the vine. They have this kind of more long nature to them and kind of looking like a fluffy foxtail, if you will. And this wine has a very unique appellation. So it's called La Crema Christi del Vesuvio. So this has to do with a legend for the kind of a Christian legend of the region, in that God or Jesus, as it were, found a missing corner of heaven that happened to be above the Gulf of Naples. I think it has something to do with just the beauty of the area. And in this legend, because of the beauty and rediscovering of this piece, God cried. So the La Crema Christi literally is the tears of Christ, or the tears of the Lord, of Vesuvius. So Vesuvius being the volcano where the slopes of the volcano with this lovely rich volcanic soil where these grapevines are grown. So there's actually there's La Crema Christi Bianco, which we'll try tonight, which is Coda di Volpe, and there is also there's a red version as well, right, Jerry? Is that correct?
Yes, Pederoso. That's probably the more famous of the two. It's from
Pederoso. So, and what else would you say about this wine and this producer, Jerry?
It's historically relevant to Campanian winemaking. In spite of the kind of gimmicky name, it has a very strong connection to Roman winemaking, going back a long time. The soils in Campania are, even though Italy is essentially, Italy itself is a peninsula with several peninsulas within it. So water affects almost every part of Italy, but in Campania, it's very much a part of it. Volcanoes are all over Italy as well, but in Campania, the two seem to kind of create a particular gumbo that makes for ideal soil types that with Coda di Volpe, Falanghina, Greco, I mean, these native varietals have beautiful expression. And if they're not really messed with in the process of the winemaking, but only in the vineyard, then they really can show off quite nicely. And this is, this is textbook to the style, really is. It's Master Berardino is one of my longtime favorite producers, and even though they're a fairly large producer in an area that is not replete with many sizable producers, they've done a lot for the region and to elevate winemaking in the region. Very much like Planeta, which we'll try later, it has done in Sicily, Master Berardino has done in Campania. But this whites, the whites, the Campania whites really do kind of flex, I think, above their fighting weight. And obviously the pastas, frito misto, the seafood, the fried seafood dishes, several of the things that we probably know from many of the Italian restaurants most of the Italian menus that we see are really Campanian menus. You have Napoli, which is famous for the pizzas, and as such is kind of where you go to learn how to make the best pizzas in the world, and you can actually get a certification for it. A lot of the seafood, a lot of the pastas that we eat, tomatoes come from the south. So these wines, this white wine has beautiful acid, beautiful weight. So it would handle beautiful, tomato sauces. It would handle certainly fried seafoods. Um, yeah, it's a pretty wine. I think it's a pretty wine. I wish I had one right now.
Yeah, I'll second that. I wish I had a glass of this wine. It is quite lovely. So hopefully everyone is enjoying all the whites so far at home. I know not everyone has all of the wines, but any favorites that you have so far, feel free to put them in the chat, or any comments about the what you think these wines might pair with, or yeah, just any reason you might be enjoying them that we haven't mentioned yet.
So I have to just say that as much as I was thinking this would be great with seafood, I'm sure it is. I happen to have some salami in front of me, and I just had that, and it was absolutely amazing, which I did not expect.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, there's a traditional dish in Campania, which is broccolini, little broccoli slivers and sausage, and they pan fry it. It's a beautiful little, and yeah, this wine's perfect with that.
So a lot of, as Jerry said in Mastro Berardino, again, they're a very historic producer, very well known, and really, you could say, kind of stewards of this region and these great varieties. But there's a lot of wines to be had aside from this one. Very interesting white wines, like made from other grapes that you may not have heard of, Falangina, Fiano, and then also some really lovely red wines. So do seek them out in general. And then we're going to get into the reds now. So Jerry did just mention Planeta. So in all of these, and a common theme that you see throughout the world, but there's always a family and a story that usually goes along with the winery. And so here you have the Planeta family. And they really are, I guess, as Jerry said, could almost be considered in the same kind of same league as Mastro Berardino, in that they are real stewards of indigenous varieties. But here we're going to jump down to Sicily. And Planeta, the family has, over the years that they've had their winery, they've expanded into different corners of the island and have ended up building unique kind of boutique wineries near each of the key regions or key winemaking regions of the area. So as they've kind of discovered and explored and had success, they've expanded and brought themselves and brought their production closer to these lovely vineyard sites. We haven't talked about it as much. I think we'll talk about it a little bit more with the next few producers, but these guys are also very much in tune with sustainability and are working to certify their vineyards organically. And you'll see that as kind of a common theme, I think, with Italian wineries. A lot of them have been farming in an organic or a biodynamic way forever anyway. And it was just sort of, as it's become something that's recognized, they've gone out and started to acquire these certifications for their wines. So Planeta, just like Mastro Berardino, produces a wide range, and they have wines which we'll taste tonight, which focus on indigenous varieties, but they've also experimented with French grapes. So they have plantings of Chardonnay, Syrah, Cabernet. One of their most famous wines, other than what we'll taste tonight, is actually a Chardonnay that they produce from Sicily. So we'll dive into the wine tonight. So tonight we're tasting the Etna Rosso. So Etna, as you can see on the front of the label, if you have it in front of you, okay, we're discussing another volcano here. And volcanic soil is something that you'll hear a lot when it comes to Italian wines. other regions of the world that have volcanic soils or volcanic influences. You hear a lot of that discussion when it comes to growing really high quality grapes. So this is their Etna Rosso. It's 100% of a grape called Nerella Mascalese. Again, a grape that is native to this area, and you really won't see it grown outside of Sicily. There might be some brave souls in Australia or California that have some small plantings, but again, really focusing on the native indigenous varieties here. And this wine, I think, as we jump into the reds, if you have a glass of this in front of you, the style is, somewhere between, it's not quite as light and delicate as a Pinot Noir, but maybe not quite as juicy and rich as something like a Barbera. So I think it's somewhere in between, but it is a wine, and I think you'll find this in general with Italian reds. It's a wine that has quite a lot of freshness to it, and is, I think, really, really pleasant to have not one but multiple glasses. It's really has a very refreshing quality to it. Jerry, what are your thoughts here?
Well, Etna. So this is the only viticultural site that is on an active volcano. Sicily has been in the wine producing business for a millennia, and grapes have been grown on the various sides of the volcano of Etna, mostly in the north to northeast side. The west side and slightly south is kind of the blowout side, so that's where most of the blowouts have gone. So the vineyards run clockwise from about 11 down to about 5. And this one, this Contrade is, I forget the name of it, but it's near Rosazzo, so it's almost due north, around 12 o'clock. And it's fairly recent. A lot of the production of Etna wines have been in the last 10, 15 years. A lot of people have from outside of Sicily come. We have Angelo Gaia from, renowned Barbaresco producer from Piemonte has come down and bought vineyards. And I think this is the late 2000s, I think, is when they started making Etna wines. And yeah, to Josh's point, I think the style is a cross between Beaujolais or Burgundy and Nebbiolo. So it's at once kind of light in color and in texture, but there's a lot of complexity there. And we're really just scratching the surface of what the quality that's going to come from this area. And I think the consideration is it's going to be one of the most consequential wine producing regions in the world, not just Italy, but in the world. And this is a pretty wine. If you like Pinot Noir, you like lighter bodied wines with a lot of energy, a lot of verve, this is a really cool wine.
Yeah, and then more kind of to Jerry's point about this being such an important, such a consequential area. It's really become, even though it is, I would say, like a relatively new discovery in terms of the people that we talk to, Jerry and I and Lauren, who's on the call, wine buyers at restaurants, hotels, etc. It's become quite a fascination that people are seeking these Etna wines. There are Etna Bianco as well, which is also quite lovely. But there is a lot of interest in this appellation in the fact that it's influenced not only by the Mediterranean Sea, but also this lovely and very unique volcanic soil. So it is one that you will see popping up on a lot of probably fine wine lists in Austin. I imagine most of you live in the Austin area. So look for Etna. And then again, with Planeta, just like Master Berardino, they do produce a lot of different wines, from sparkling to white to rosé to a lot of different lovely reds. So definitely a winery that represents a lot of quality and something to look out for when you are dining, when we all get to go out dining again soon, hopefully.
I assume all of you have some kind of wine refrigerator, someplace where you keep your wines. But if for whatever reason you don't, or you have limited space and you keep whites in there mostly, I really recommend a little chill to this wine, just cellar temperature chill. But it does really, it does pop. All the complexities, I think, show much better when there's a little bit of a temperature to it.
All right, so if anyone has any questions, feel free to jump in or put something in the chat, any comments, good or bad. You love the wines, you hate the wines. It all makes sense, so just let us know. But we'll keep on rolling here. I think we're still on time, but definitely want to leave some time at the end for questions if we need. So we're going to go back up north to Tuscany. So Tuscany, which is a region, that is probably more heavily traveled than some of these areas in the south. So probably several of you that are on the call have maybe at one time visited Florence or Siena. So lovely places, and hopefully you're able to, while you're there, venture out and see some of the beautiful wineries and vineyards that surround those two lovely cities. So this is Coldaorcia. And Coldaorcia is one of the original estates in Montalcino. So Montalcino is a village also in Tuscany. And the wine we'll try tonight is the Brunello di Montalcino. So Brunello, again, when we're talking about grape varieties in Italy, you find these synonyms everywhere. So Sangiovese is the grape variety that's in this wine, but locally it had been historically referred to as Brunello. So another synonym for Sangiovese. This is another estate that has really become very focused on organic and sustainable biodynamic farming. So in 2013, all of the wines were certified organic. The Count, this gentleman here in the center with the white beard showing off the wine, Count Cinzano, who owns the estate, has been really focused on kind of converting the vineyards to basically have them all organic, and that's something that he's continued to strive for. So there's also several wines to have from this estate. Tonight we're having, I wanted to show you guys some pretty pictures first. So I thought this was lovely. This is a garden outside the winery with this lovely wisteria kind of hanging above it. It's quite picturesque. And then, of course, some images of the vineyards here. And then we'll dive into the wine. So Brunello di Montalcino, there's, when you talk about Italy, often you hear about the 3 Bs, the 3 kind of great red wines of Italy. So there's Barolo, Barbaresco, and the one that's not in Piedmont is here, Brunello. And the vintage that we're trying tonight is the 2015. And we were able, I think, to get everyone actually kind of the last bottles of this vintage that were available in Texas. So we'll be rolling into the 2016 vintage here in the spring. But really a lovely wine. I think Sangiovese, in my opinion, is again a really very versatile variety. So you've got, I think, it ticks a lot of boxes. You have freshness, you have acidity, you have lovely, I think, red fruit character that also comes into the profile, but also you have, I think, a lovely kind of savory, rustic aspect to these wines. And I think they're quite lovely. So in terms of something that, a lot of times when you're having friends for dinner, or again, when in the future, when we can all go out together, maybe to dinner at a large party, and several people have various dishes on the table, right? Someone's ordered a steak, someone else has got the grilled fish, someone's having a salad, but maybe what is a wine that's going to kind of tie everything together? And I often lean, some people lean toward Beaujolais as kind of the wine that's going to be the secret wine that'll kind of pair with everyone's food. But I think Sangiovese is a variety, and if you can find a lovely Brunello, I think they tend to be ones that can kind of bridge those different dishes. Jerry, I'm gonna let you jump in and say a few words.
Brunello really kind of, or the region, the grape, Brunello, really kind of exploded into the international wine scene with the 85 vintage, which was a great vintage. That kind of really put the Montalcino on the map. And ever since then, the wines have just skyrocketed in notoriety, varying degrees of quality, and in price. And so that being said, I mean, you can find, even though it's a DOCG and it's highly protected and it's highly regarded, there are lesser Brunellos out there, and certainly lesser Brunellos out there that cost more than they should. I've always been very taken with this one. I don't have a long history with it, but a few years now, and I've liked it way more than I maybe ever thought I would. It is very much traditional in style. Hasn't really ever leaned into the modern aspects that have taken place in Montalcino. The grape, the Sangiovese Grosso, differs considerably from Chianti and Chianti Classico Sangioveses, as Josh said. The area itself is really, even though you look on the map and you see Montalcino kind of in the center of southern Tuscany, it butts up next to the area, the Moerma, which was old swamplands for the longest part. In the 20s, most of those swamps were dredged up and to create more real estate. But it's so, as such, Montalcino still very much benefits from its relationship to the water, and as such, its temperature shifts are not quite as dramatic as Montepulciano, just a little bit to its east. There is, I will correct something Josh said just a minute ago. We were able to kind of grab a little cache of 2015 vintage Brunello. So we have some coming back to Austin. I don't know if you guys ever discuss if you have retail places that you recommend or that you visit, but we're big fans of the Austin Wine Merchant, and all these wines actually can be had there. And if not there, they can order them. But so the 15 vintage you're tasting tonight will be available there probably next week. But do not fear, as great as the 15 is, the 16's going to be also great. It's a great vintage.
Yeah, that's a great point and good news for Austin. So get some 15 while you can, and then look for the 16 to arrive sometime this spring. All right, so keep rolling. We do have one more wine.
It looks like we've got a question here. How did 15 and 16 compare to 10?
Let's see. I'm gonna let Jerry answer that one.
Like the 2010 vintage, which everyone says is like the.
Yeah. 2010 is a rock star vintage. I mean, you kind of have, and it's not a rock star vintage in the way that it was. Well, you have other vintages which were considered to be rock star vintages for varying reasons. Heat, temperature shifts, and whatever. 10 was a kind of a perfect storm, if you will, of just that area. Now it's weird because 2010 did not translate throughout all of Tuscany as a really good vintage, let alone Italy itself. It did kind of perfectly situate itself, and I really do believe it was because of its proximity to the old marshlands and whatever, and its geographical setting. 10 was very good. 10 was a very age necessary wine. So you really needed it to age quite a bit. 15 was discussed in the same kind of glowing terms as 10 prior to its release. However, 15 was a much warmer vintage. It was a much fleshier vintage. The wines are still aged beautifully in the best producers, 20, 25, 30 years or so. But 15's a little bit more forward. So you can probably enjoy a 15 earlier than you could a 10. 16 is going to be much similar to 10. 16 is going to be very classic, ultra classic. As such, you'll still be drinking 15s and you'll be drinking 17s while you're waiting for 16s to kind of come along.
Okay, awesome. And then looking
You'll see a
back
lot of
at
100-point wines from 16, though. You will see a lot of that. It's going to be a crazy vintage.
looking forward to that for sure. And then looking back at the chat, we had a lot of love for the Etna, so that's good to see, and some good comments there. Cool, great questions. All right, so we'll stay kind of in the northern end of Italy. Now we're going to jump over to the eastern side for Bertani. So now we're kind of in the northeast corner near Verona of Italy. So Bertani, probably of all the estates, well, I mean, I think we've really have a great lineup here tonight. The 6 wineries that we chose are all really like icons in their own respect in terms of what they do in their region. They are definitely benchmark producers. Bertani is really synonymous with a wine called Amarone. So we won't be tasting Amarone tonight, but we'll kind of be trying its we could say its younger sister or little brother in a sense. But Bertani has been was kind of one of the original estates to produce this style, and then they've really maintained their commitment to authenticity for the style. So they continue to use these very traditional bamboo drying racks to dry the grapes. So we won't go too deep into the Amarone style since we're not trying it tonight, but one of the benchmarks of it is that the grapes are harvested and then they're dried for a period of months before they are crushed and processed into wine. And so there's a process where they are exposed to the elements and allowed to dry on these bamboo racks. So let's take a look at what those look like. So I did share a couple lovely pictures. So here are the racks being kind of staged in the vineyard. So the pickers will come in and fill these up, and then they'll be stacked in a special building where the drying actually occurs. This is a little bit of a close-up of the grapes there. And again, we're dealing with varieties that are grape varieties that are unique to this region, and really you don't see them elsewhere. In this grape, or in this wine, we have the Corvina variety, which is the one that you're going to see most of. Rondinello is another, and there's a third unique one to this area called Molinara, but you're not seeing it used as much as it has been in the past. But the wine you have hopefully in front of you tonight is called Valpolicella Ripasso. So Valpolicella is kind of a larger regional area. The Amarone wine we were just discussing is actually referred to as Amarone della Valpolicella. And this wine, which is called Valpolicella Ripasso, is unique in that what they're doing is they're taking the fermented wine and they're passing it over the dried skins that were left over from the Amarone production that we just discussed. So it's a way for them to, get a little bit more mileage, you could say, out of these dried grapes that they've spent several months meticulously drying. So that's what the Ripasso refers to. It's basically repassed over and it adds another layer of interest, layer of complexity to the wine, and you're going to get some of those more dried fruit, more kind of rich, dark flavors coming through here. So it's a way for you to kind of get close to that Amarone style, but you end up with a wine that's has a bit more freshness. And again, you're willing to kind of go back for that second sip, that second glass, whereas an Amarone, you might it might take a little bit longer for you to appreciate that wine. Bertani is also an estate, again, that has a lot of history in this region. They have a lot of expertise, especially with these red wines, Valpolicella, Ripasso, and Amarone. But they do produce a wide range of wines, whites and rosés as well, that are made from traditional appellations and traditional grape varieties in the region. So, for instance, they produce a lovely Soave, which is a white wine that you'll find in this area. And then they produce a rosé, which is using some of the same varieties that we're talking about tonight with the Ripasso. Jerry, thoughts on Bertani?
Yeah, I mean, another iconic producer. Bertani is really quite good at the library selections of their benchmark Amarone. You can invariably always find vintages going back into the 60s in offers that come out of the winery and through Taub. So if you were looking for a birth vintage, you should always call us up if you're looking for one that goes back far enough, because chances are there's one in the library with their Amarones. I will be honest, probably shouldn't be. I'm not as huge a fan of Amarone as as others, but I adore Valpolicella. I really do love Valpolicella. I love the freshness and the brightness and the liveliness of Valpolicella. And Ripasso to me strikes the perfect chord of the freshness of the Valpolicella style. You know, the Corvina really shows off, and Corvina is a beautiful grape. It's a shame they can't just, Valpolicella couldn't be just 100% Corvina, because it's a beautiful, beautiful grape. But Ripasso gives you a little bit, Josh explained the technique, so it gives you a little bit of that richness that maybe Amarones have in spades, sometimes too much. But a good Ripasso is a really, really good, reflective, introspective wine. You can really enjoy, you know, it by itself easily. There's richness there, kind of beautiful roasting of the fruits that's really quite lovely. Yeah, fan of this one.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. We won't finish just yet. So I think, you know, tonight we really took a really cool tour. I worked with Jerry and Lauren to zero in on the selection tonight, but I think that we had a good mix of styles of wine, from sparkling to really fun racy whites, to definitely varying you know, weights and styles of reds, from the Etna up to this lovely Ripasso. But I think what I always think about with Italian wines in general, and this goes for a lot of European wine producers, but I think Italy is really known for this, and it's that the winemaker or the grape grower, sometimes the person who's growing the grapes and making the wine is the same person, but they really are always thinking about what are we going to eat with this wine. You know, they're almost never thinking of a wine in a vacuum. Like, I'm just going to produce this lovely rosé to have by itself out on the patio. There's always an idea in the head of the winemaker or the grape grower of what will I enjoy with this when it's finished. And it's Italy, just like France, has a rich culture of not only winemaking, but charcuterie and cheese, and all of these different regions have their own regional specialties, not only for these cured meats and cheeses, but of course with the cuisine that they end up going into. And I think it's really unique to think about these wines in that way, and that they really are almost designed to be enjoyed together with food. So I think that to me always is kind of the special thing to take away with Italian wines. And then I think the whites tend to be a little bit underdiscovered, and I think we looked at some really great ones tonight. But I encourage you, you know, in your as you go out to discover new wines at the Austin Wine Merchant or somewhere else, but to really check out and ask about Italian whites, because I think they really are quite lovely and tend to be very unique and usually quite fresh. And then the reds of Italy, and this is kind of more of a generalization because we have, as we saw tonight, a lot of different styles available. But again, I think it goes back to that idea of their affinity with food. Is they a lot of times Italian reds and particularly always have this lovely kind of underlying current of like freshness. You know, there's this attitude to these wines, and I think they're produced with great balance. You're not just getting you know, all this richness and fruit. There's some fresh or crisp characters to them, and I think there's, again, they're quite versatile and can go with a lot of different cuisines. So that would be my kind of final word. But did anyone else have any other questions or comments? Or I know we had some, so we have some stuff here in the chat maybe.
I have a couple questions. First of all, I'd love to know what foods you would pair with the Valpolicella.
Okay, I'll go first. I would say, you know, this is a wine, I think probably you're going to go more toward like braised or grilled meats is going to be a good place to go with it. Certainly Denise, I think you were eating some salami or some different charcuterie. I think that goes quite well. And then to Jerry's point, you know, where the Valpolicella wines, they do have, you know, kind of some lightness and freshness. And I think just like we said, the things we said about the Etna wine is that this could be like your like perfect pick for Thanksgiving or Christmas dinner or something along these lines, where you're in a situation that you have a lot of different cuisines or a lot of different styles of food on the table, and this can kind of come in and bridge the gap. But you know, you also kind of think of the cuisines of the region. So I think Jerry might be able to comment more on like what the Verona area is well known for, but the Valpolicella I think would also just be killer wine to have with a good pizza, in my opinion.
Gnocchis and risottos are big in the area. There's also, again, kind of the importance of the ocean influences around there. There's a lot of good seafood in the area too. Razor clams and these tiny little shrimp that get thrown in a little batter, and then pan fried, and you just pop them in your mouth. And they're great. But to this, I mean, eggplant, however you want to do your risotto, mushroom risotto with Valpolicella would be great. You know, it would be really good. The earthiness to it, and the richness. Vegetable risottos as well. And gnocchi just takes, you know, pretty much whatever you put with it. Tomatoes are more of a southern fruit than they are to the north. So, but you can see maybe where the acid might work a little bit. Be a lot going on there, maybe with the ripasso and tomatoes. But again, eggplant I think would go great.
I love that. I think that's a great call with the Valpolicella. I'm wondering now about the Brunello Montalcino, because talk about mushrooms, that like hit me in the face. Like I just want to go saute up a bunch of mushrooms right now. Yeah.
You know, in Tuscany, and that Tuscany's in addition to grapes, olive groves grow rampant throughout there and through most in through Chianti and down into Montalcino as well, which doesn't really mean anything about with this wine, but there's a dish, and there are particular types of cows that are raised in Tuscany as well. So beef is really highly regarded in Tuscany. There's a very simple steak Fiorentini, which just basically it's usually put in some kind of little basket press, put it in, bridged over an open fire, and just roasted, and then pulled off. It's doused with olive oil and squeezed fresh lemon. I've had that with Brunello there, and it's pretty damn good. It's really right on. Anything else you add to it is just gravy, but that beautiful, just kind of does a little Barry White to the whole thing. It's very, very sexy. Very nice.
Yeah.
I love it. I'd love to know what everyone else thought. What were some of your favorites? What kind of hit you as something you'd go out and buy again? Anyone else?
I love the Etna. I mean, I really liked everything. My least favorite was the Valpolicella, but that's just because my flavor profile doesn't go in that direction. But really enjoyed everything, and I'm so glad that I have a lot left over to
Awesome.
to enjoy tomorrow, hopefully.
Great. It looks like Christine also commented that she just enjoyed all the wines and then enjoyed learning about them. So thanks, Christine.
We really enjoyed the Etna as well as the Ferrari Brut. Both were fantastic.
It was great.
Great. Yeah, I think that Ferrari, from my opinion, I think that wine is such a great, you get a lot of quality for the price, and it's just like, if you need to have something as your go-to bubbles that tastes like a champagne but doesn't cost as much as a champagne, yeah, that would be a great one for you to keep around.
I want to say hi to Margaret up there in the corner. I know you two from my restaurant days. I've been spying you and wanted to say hi. So hi.
Hey, Jeff, it's so nice to see you. And I think I want to go to Italy with you now.
You do. Of course, you really do. You do. I promise you do.
Me too.
So do tell, what restaurant? What's the backstory?
I guess we first met at Vino.
Vino.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking, I don't really remember having a conversation with you that much specifically about wines at the time. But anyway, this was just delightful having you here tonight.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So did you guys ever come into Mezzaluna when I was there? So before Vino?
Quite possibly, yeah. But I don't specifically remember knowing you from there. But yeah, we did go to Mezzaluna back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
I was always at the bar. I was always behind the bar.
If you might have squeezed some limes for, no, I'm thinking of the Abuelitas that was there before Mezzaluna at the bar. Bellini's, what we had at Mezzaluna.
Bellini's, yeah. And then Olivia after Vino was. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. For Verona, Locanda di Castelvecchio, Bolito Misto.
So when you're in Verona, you get your Bolito Misto goes with the Valpolicella, right?
Oh, okay. Got it.
Oh, that's a good call.
Yeah. 1991 Palazzo della Torre.
Palazzo della Torre.
Okay, that's a good wine.
Yeah. It's Corvina driven. Yeah.
Yeah, it's made by the Allegrini family winery.
Yeah. Larissa. Well, this was cool. I'm really bummed I didn't have any of the wines. I was hoping you guys were enjoying. Nobody would share, so I don't really appreciate that, but I hope you enjoyed.
It was good. Very
Yeah, this was a great variety for sure. And hopefully these will stay good for a couple of days.
Yes. Yeah, they certainly should. Just pop the cork back in. Especially, those whites, they're all quite fresh, and they'll keep that lovely fresh acidity for a few days. So
Yeah.
Keep your reds in the fridge. If you don't have a way to pump it or whatever, just keep them in the fridge, and it'll slow its oxidization somewhat too, so they'll stay fresher longer.
Great. Well, this was super fun. Thank you both. This was a really great class and such a great variety of Italian wines. I learned a lot, and experienced a lot in these classes tonight. So I hope everyone else did as well. This was really fun. Does anyone else have any other questions, thoughts, comments before we sign off tonight? Well, hopefully we're coming to the end of dry January, because I don't understand. Someone asked me if I was doing dry January, and I said, I'm sorry, but my job prevents me from doing that. That's the reason I don't do it.
Yeah.
If you're gonna pick a month, pick February. It's shorter.
That's a good idea. Anyway, we're really glad for everyone who came. Thank you for coming. Please register for our upcoming classes. We've got a really great schedule coming up, so check those out. And again, Josh and Jerry, thank you so much for all your knowledge and education tonight, and hope everyone enjoys these wines for the next couple days to come. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
you.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you all.
All right.
Bye, Jerry.
Bye, y'all.